What's up, everyone, and welcome to Method in the Madness. This is the podcast that not only delves deep into design and creativity, but also leadership, productivity, and personal development. And we are at episode 6. And during this episode, I get to sit down with a guy called Calum Haggerty. And Calum is the managing director of COCO Chocolatier, which is based here in Edinburgh. And if you're a local or, even Scottish for that matter, I'm sure you've probably heard of cocoa before. But for those who haven't, Cocoa produced premium chocolate bars using some of the finest cocoa beans from South America. And they also produce another whole range of different products as well. But it was a really fun episode to do. Callum is just a great guy to have on the show, super honest, calls a spade, and just, tells it how it is, whether it's good or bad. And that was just super refreshing to hear. And I'm sure, some of you maybe saw the word chocolate and tuned in to maybe hear the intrinsic detail of chocolate making and kind of pictured this, guy from the Lindt advert probably. But, if that's what you're expecting, this is probably not the episode for you. But what Callum and I do chat about so candidly was kind of Callum's career journey and his start in the chocolate industry when he bought Cocoa. We talk about the difficulty and struggles he has personally experienced running a small but successful business, many of which he was really just kind of happy to call out and says that he still struggles with, like, things like people management and switching off from work and all these kind of things that I think are super relatable. Callum also speaks very openly about a lot of the misconceptions of the chocolate industry and some of the, really severe problems with it as well, and a lot of the kind of bullshit that goes along with it. And, we also talk about Coco's philosophy, why that is their philosophy, how they source their beans, and what's on the horizon for Cocoa in the future too. And I mean, I think you guys agree with me. Callum's honesty and kind of candid manner just gives you this great insight into the world of running a small business, and I really enjoyed chatting with him. But without much further ado, please welcome Calum Haggerty to Method in the Madness. Callum, thank you very much for coming on the show. Firstly, I was hoping to have actually visited Cocoa Chocolate School. However, it was fully booked. So
There you go.
Definitely a good sign. So I was going to make a bad joke about Oompa Loompas and stuff, but it doesn't really seem appropriate. But I'm going to have to wait for my visit at the end of September, I think it is now.
Okay.
But me and the missus will be going along. But you used to work in the fire service, and now you run the very popular chocolate company, COCO Chocolatier. That's quite a leap in terms of going from where you were to where you are now. Could you tell us a little bit about your kind of journey from that?
Yeah, it's quite a leap from the fire service to running a chocolate business, and people kind of thought I was taking the piss when I when I told people. I remember when I went in to hand in my notice into the fire service, they were kind of, I said, not thinking that they would take the piss out of me at all. I said, I'm taking over a chocolate business.
Even those words.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing, that they just kind of stared at me. They were like, okay. But yeah, it's kind of like most things in my life. I kind of fell in and out of everything. And the fire service is kind of like that too. I was at uni here in Edinburgh. I had it doing business and finance. And the only reason I did business and finance was because I didn't know what to do. So my dad sort of said that's kind of a solid degree, and it's also one that you can blag.
Yeah.
So I was okay at that. And it came up. I guess the irony is, I did business and finance, but I didn't want to work in an office. So that those two things don't really go hand in hand. So failed. I think I failed third year. Resat third year, and it was fairly clear that I was struggling with this degree. So
not so blaggable.
Well, yeah. First and second year, you get away with it, yeah. And then just saw the advert in the paper for the fire service, and at the time, I didn't, it's actually quite a competitive thing to get into, and I had genuinely no idea about that. And I think that's what helped me, was the fact that when we went and did the tests, I didn't really care, because I didn't really care whether I got in or not. And that sounds terrible, but it was just, to me, it was just kind of a job. Fell into that, and then I think they called me up. They said, "Can you start in 2 weeks?" Which again is fairly rare. They normally hold you in pools for like ages. And yeah, before I knew it, I was kind of like I'd left university after third year. I just got my ordinary degree, which is pathetic. And
they don't matter these days.
Yeah, no, they don't matter. You're right. They certainly don't matter. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's, you get what you put into it, and I didn't put an awful lot into it. So like that, yeah. So it's not the university's fault. It's my own. So yeah, I kind of fell into that. Ended up staying there for 8 years. But I always kind of had, like, I always wanted to run my own businesses, even for like, and I don't know why, but even when I was a kid, I used to make things and sit and sell things on the street when I was a child. Like, we used to go to Seal Island, and I used to write sort of Seal Island on bits of slate and sell them to tourists and things like that. So like, I always kind of like, me and my friend used to sell gobstoppers out the lockers to like our fellow pupils at lunchtime and stuff. So like, I always kind of sort of had that slight Del Boy part to myself.
Yes.
So yeah, I started looking for a business because I didn't actually find COCO. COCO was founded in 2004 by an Australian lady, and I was just kind of looking for a business that we could actively go out there and sell something. So by that I mean, something like a restaurant or a cafe is footfall, right? You could have the best restaurant and cafe in the world. If nobody goes into it, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So it's very much kind of, I was looking for something that made something. So found COCO, and at the time we were it wasn't doing well. So got it for next to nothing, basically.
Why was that? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, no, I can say, like, the problem with the business was it was hugely seasonal. As probably not much of a shock, like Christmas and Easter and Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, all the stuff you would imagine for chocolate is really popular. However, like January, it's like a shit show. It's like properly tough. So it just changed the focus of the business entirely, which was always my plan. So rather than being a retail business, so B2C, we just changed it to B2B. So although we have had retail shops in the past, we've had Bruntsfield, Stockbridge, Broughton Street, and we just opened up at Edinburgh Airport.
I saw
2
that
weeks ago.
when I was traveling down.
But yeah, I mean, like 90% of all of our businesses selling to other retailers. So that was it. That was kind of we managed to turn it around pretty quickly by doing that.
And how did you realize that kind of, that would be better, or you knew that would be successful, or did you not? Was it just a bit of a gamble?
I didn't, to be honest. It was like, I think like a lot of things, if you thought about it too much, you would never start anything, right?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like being super naive and going in and just going, oh, can't be that difficult. And I've always found
pretty much what I thought when I started this podcast.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I've always found the business part comes to me quite naturally. I think like I struggle in other aspects of it. Like I don't really see myself as a very good manager. And like, if there's any of my staff listening right now, I'm sure they would agree. I'm sure they would agree. So like I find that to be the more challenging part, not necessarily going like, how are we gonna get into the US, or how are we gonna get to China, or I find all that bit and the marketing sort of sales side of it like comes to me more naturally than, I guess, the people management. But I've got a great team, so I'm really lucky that they just kind of crack on and get on with their own jobs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can, like most things in my life, I just kind of totally fell into it. So the thing, I guess, that I saw about COCO, so there's obviously that business aspect that I talked about, which is, look, I think there's a market for it. I think we can change the model that we're using. However, it's like I love art and design, and I kind of saw that as, but I'm not really qualified in anything. So I was like, the only person that's going to give me a job in art and design is me. So kind of, we work with different artists and designers to make bespoke wrappers. So like, I love that. That's one part of the job that I like. I love like flicking through Instagram trying to find new artists and designers, and that's kind of how we do it.
That's simple.
Yeah, and
I was
like,
going to discuss that later on. But
yeah, I think again, because I don't really like, I'm not educated in it. Like, I don't mess around with it too much. Like, I just go in and I go, do you know what? That's cool. I like that. And we just get in touch with them and say, look, we like what you do what you do. Like, and we don't, because we're not a grocery brand, we're a gifting brand. We really are free to kind of do whatever we want with
Yeah.
regards to the art and design, which is great. So we allow them to do just what they want, and it's, you know, it's nice to be able to give people like a shelf, so they can see them. You know, we have like a gallery descriptor. So on the front, each product is the name of the artwork and the name of the artist. So it's nice to give people a platform like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an aspect of the job. Like I like it's great. We have a new product development manager who's doing a lot of that for us at the moment. But I do kind of miss that part of it.
Yeah. And what made you kind of decide to kind of pick working rather than coming up with your own branded packaging? You know, that, because obviously that's quite different, like collaborating with different artists and designers
Yeah,
across the world. Was there a bit of a thought process in that? Was it just a kind of screw it?
it was. I think there's lots of chocolate companies doing really nice packaging, and when you're in that gifting sort of area, like you have to have nice packaging, because it's, like I say, it's a gift. But the inspiration, I guess, for the collaboration part was, it was kind of like a dirty secret at Coco. Like, we used to just get loads of images of Shutterstock, but people used to always ask me, like, "Oh, this artwork's really cool. Like, who did it?" And I'm like, "Oh shit!" I was like, "I'm gonna have to make something up
That's
here."
awesome. I mean,
So like, we worked with,
good old Shutterstock.
yeah, well, this is it, and we kind of, and it was that feedback we were getting all the time. Like, people really did want to know more about the people that had done it. So we were like, right, well, we better actually do it. But it's hugely time consuming as well, like that back and forth with an artist, because you want them to represent themselves well, but it also needs to do a job, right? Like, it needs to sell the product. So yeah, it's very time consuming, which is why we didn't do it initially, and it's expensive, right? You know, obviously
Yeah.
we're buying licenses and things, like
For
you know,
producing.
Shutterstock's for like £8 or something.
Yeah.
So it's a bit different, but yeah, that's great. And it was that feedback we were getting from customers all the time. We thought, you know what, there's nobody actually out there telling the story of the artists and designers. Like, there's loads of cool packaging and stuff,
Yeah.
but there's nobody really taking the opportunity. So we were working with our agency in Glasgow. They came up with we came up with the concept ourselves, which was, you know, working for the artists and designers, but they came up with the concept for the label to be like a gallery descriptor.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's worked really well. So yeah, that's how we
It
ended
kind
up
of
there.
paid off
Yeah.
at the Scottish Design Awards as well.
Yeah, we didn't win,
For
but
it's better than nothing, that's for
who
sure.
won? Like Glaswegian won
Uh,
the packaging thing. So anyway,
it's
we're not
also
bitter.
quite cool packaging.
Yeah, we're not bitter about it at all.
No, still very good though. Kind of reading up about Coco. Coco kind of say they want to kind of change the perception of chocolate.
Yep.
What do you think? Like, what does that mean to you, and why change the perception of chocolate and not just make chocolate?
I think the chocolate industry is fairly misunderstood, and it's one of these industries that you know, you work with, there's so many different people involved in that supply chain, all the way down to the farmer, to the manufacturers, and I think there's lots of common misconceptions as to what people do within the industry. So we talked about like the art and design, and that's definitely, like, I guess that's probably what we're known for. But actually, from like a sourcing perspective, the industry kind of works by going to basically a poor country and paying them next to nothing for the raw commodity, which is the cacao beans.
Yeah.
And all those kind of terrible things that you hear, you know, about child labor and slavery and all these type of things, tends to be West Africa, and tends to be kind of like blended chocolates. So we don't do that. So we source, it's something we call it Cocoa Origin Made. So more of the product gets finished at origin. So in our case, that's Colombia.
Yeah.
Before it comes over to Scotland.
Cool.
And that kind of creates, it kind of retransforming the industry a little bit. I mean, more origin countries should make products.
Yeah.
But they don't. They sell the lowest value product that they get, right, which is a raw commodity. So yeah, it's something we call origin made. It's quite a difficult thing to explain to the consumer in like a succinct way on a pack.
Or like the meaning of what, like, you can probably explain it in words, but get them to actually understand why that's important.
Like why is it important and why they should care about it. And it's difficult because there's not that many chocolate companies that are making products at origin. You know, it's like famously like Belgium and Switzerland.
Yeah.
You know, obviously the irony being like it doesn't grow there, right? Like, but it's kind of, you know, they've done an amazing marketing job over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a lot of the issues stem for me from them taking that commodity and then taking it back to like a developed economy like Switzerland and Belgium, which is where they create all the wealth.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the two things that we do. The way we source is obviously like quite important. So for me, it's just kind of, you know, people always hear about farmers getting underpaid, and it's true, but there almost needs to be, they need to look at somewhere like Colombia and think, do you know what? They're doing an amazing job selling like a higher value product to a developed economy like Scotland. But yeah, and I guess that's what that means to me is trying to change the industry. I mean, we're tiny, but you know, we can do what we do. I mean, it's, for me, it's just kind of, it's a very obvious thing to do is to source in the correct way, but most companies don't, right?
Yeah. How did you discover that was possible to do at source? Is it just a case of literally asking the question and just no one tends to because they just want the lowest cost to come back to them?
I just think if you're a challenger brand like we are and you're small, you need to be doing things differently. Or you should be wanting to do things differently as well. But yeah, it's just, it's really rare. You know, Colombia do it. There's some places in Madagascar, Vietnam, but it's a lot easier. Like the easiest thing for us to do would be buy products from Belgium. It would be cheaper. It'd be faster.
Yeah.
So there's that quality aspect to it as well. South America's like famous for the quality of the products there. Yeah. Whereas West Africa tends to be the sort of, you know, that's where the volume is. I think, nobody quote me on this, but I think it's like 70% of the world's chocolate comes from West Africa.
Oh, wow.
So
Jesus Christ.
it's basically the industry. That's all of it. So I guess like what you could, if I was going to be like, you know, really critical of ourselves, like you could lay on our doorstep, be like, well, you're just avoiding the problem. You're not fixing the problem. And I think there's some truth in that. But I think being as small as we are, like we need to, like there's only so much we can do.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we we're very transparent of how we work. Like we're not saying to people, this is the best way to do it. This is the only way to do it. It's just like, you know, we do it because we think it's the right thing to do. Like we don't, and it's quite difficult, like a brand telling the consumer something, because the consumers are so wary of, and they should be, right? Like, you know, the amount of shit everybody talks is like incredible. You know, marketing is so slick these days.
Well, it's also just like people, so many brands are just desperate to stand out somehow that they'll say or do almost anything.
Yeah.
And rather than whether it's, you know, true or not, like it's just, you know, I don't know what it is, maybe the whole Instagram generation of kind of faking till you make it, but it's just, yeah, there's not a lot of authenticity.
No, I don't think so. And I think it's like people feel the need to do something, you know, they would rather talk complete shit and it not be true than just but be able to say something like, you know, we source from like, you know, we get everything on a boat ourselves. Something like it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
So like, I think, you know, I used to talk about the business a lot, it was like, you kind of felt like you had to put on this, like the show, this act. But now I just think, look, you know, the way that we source is great. You know, we should be proud of it. We should just say, this is why we do it like this. Rather than trying to make it into like some huge, like we're definitely not like a preachy brand. You know, we do what we do because we think it's a good way to work. Like we're not going to be overly critical of anyone that doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not like
not getting on your high horse. Or
it's just not part of what we do, and it's just not. I'm not very like that with anything. It's just kind of, look, we do this because we think it's the right thing to do. You guys don't. Okay, well, I disagree, but
are you on board or are you not on board?
Yeah, exactly. So,
all right, cool. And what I suppose, if it is kind of getting made at source, does that kind of simplify the actual process from it going from source to someone's mouth?
Yes,
because there's less steps, maybe, or
yeah, there is less steps, and it's another common misconception to what chocolatiers actually do. Like the vast majority of chocolatiers work with what's called couverture. essentially kind of like chocolate buttons, and then they make products out of those
Yeah,
buttons,
like
right?
actually, as it rings a bell.
Yeah, whereas there are people that make it from the bean, like people have heard the phrase bean to bar. So there are people that do that. So yeah, that process is obviously a lot bigger than what we're doing. But yeah, we're trying to grow the business. So kind of increasing volume for us is quite an important thing. So at the moment, like we might go back and do it. But at the moment, it's just we've got enough headaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's enough shit to worry about.
Um, what's the kind of setup at Coco in terms of, you know, you have some pretty unique flavors that have been quite successful, like your gin and tonic and things like that. Is it yourself and a team of people that kind of come up with flavors? Can anyone come up with a flavor? And how long does it take to go from how about we try this to, I suppose, having a prototype,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word?
Um, it is a sort of a joint thing. Like, firstly, we do the art and design completely independently of the flavor, so they're kind of two separate projects. And then
That's cool.
and then only at the end do we kind of think, oh, do you know what? Like that's green. It's not. So the artist doesn't have a brief to say like you're going to be doing the gin and tonic wrapper.
That'll
It's
probably come up with more interesting options, surprisingly, though. Like rather
yeah,
than having too restrictive a brief, it's just kind of a bit more wide open.
yeah, exactly. And it's very much like we want the artists and designers to do what we like them for, right? We don't want them to be like, okay, it's going to be rhubarb and ginger flavor, so I've got to do stuff with rhubarbs and it's just like,
Yeah.
and then suddenly it starts really grocery, which we're not.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of, we don't get to do it as much as you would imagine because retailers hate you changing the products because they've got to change, the photographs on their website and all this sort of stuff. So we actually change the packaging more often than we change the flavors. But yeah, I think most of what we do are bars. So there's actually not that like the enemy of chocolate is water, right? So you can really only put like spices, oils into chocolate, and for shelf life reasons as well. We need a good shelf life, so it's quite restrictive as to what you can do with it.
I never really thought about that before, actually.
Yeah, it's
when you think about flavors of chocolate, it's not really something you consider. Well, I don't consider.
Yeah,
I just eat it.
Yeah, and it's like we try like all of our products are natural. So again, like if you're going down that route, then it's even harder to kind of come up with something because a lot of flavors and things are not natural.
Like synthetic oils.
Yeah,
and all this kind of
exactly. So, and we used to be certified organic for a long time too. And yeah, again, like quite a restrictive thing. So yeah, we put our heads together. We've got a couple of chocolatiers downstairs. They all put together some flavor concepts and ideas. But the reality is most people kind of like people like to think
staples.
that they like to think they're really adventurous, but most people are not really adventurous. And they'll go kind of like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, but then they'll buy like the sea salt bar because it's a solid choice.
It's good though.
But yeah, exactly. So yeah, we change them like at most maybe 3 times. We'll change like 3 bars. So our core range is like 12, and we'll change maybe 3 at most a year, 18 months.
Okay.
So we don't change a lot, and a lot of times that's down to the retailer because the retailers just want an easy life.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Yeah.
And how often is it more so? Is it quite a lot of effort to at least give it a bash and see what it tastes like, or
not really?
Is it quite a relatively quick process to at least go right? That's never going to work. It might not be a perfect recipe, but even so, that's disgusting.
Yeah. Oh no, we've definitely done stuff that's disgusting.
What's the worst?
We did we were working with a seaweed brand, and they wanted us to do like some seaweed chocolate for them.
No, that'd be similar to sea salt because
yeah, it was awful. It was like
yeah,
it just kind of it's just the two things that are not meant to be put together. So, but we were asked to do it. It kind of wasn't our idea. But yeah, we'll experiment quite a lot. But the reality is I think a lot of people think, like when they hear the word chocolatier, they assume that there's kind of someone down there like crafting this.
The guy from the
one
fucking
thing.
Lint advert with his whisk, swirling crap around with a big hat on.
Exactly, yeah. And the reality is we're a manufacturing business.
Yeah.
I think like when you come to see the school, you'll probably be surprised. Like it's definitely more of a manufacturing thing, and that's the way we're growing the business. So we've invested in a lot of equipment and things. yes, a lot of people are kind of a little bit disappointed. They're like, "Yeah, is this it?" You're like, "Yeah, this is it."
What were they expecting? Chocolate fountains and
yeah, all sort of stuff.
creepy guys in
Yeah,
top hats and
yeah,
all
it's
sorts.
it's nothing like that. But yeah, it's like most people we employ now are from a manufacturing background, so they're not even, they don't even necessarily know the product.
Yeah,
Like
or like
chocolate, and then we'll teach them that part, because actually the manufacturing side of it is more important. That's boring shit, like efficiencies and all that sort of
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
sure. Because I suppose, like, well, I'm assuming here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you could probably teach somebody how to be the chocolatier part relatively easily.
yeah, you
Is
could.
that another misconception?
No,
Or?
I think, um, yeah, you definitely could. It depends what you do. I think because we so much of our product, or so much of our revenue, is made up of the bars, that yes, you can teach somebody quite quickly how to do that. And then there's a lot of, if you're doing like truffles and bonbons and stuff, that's definitely more of a skill set.
Yeah.
However, like the shelf lives are too short, and like I said earlier, we're a B2B business now. So if John Lewis are like, listen, 6 months, that's like minimum, shelf life. That's what it's going to be. So there's all these restrictions around
God, it's
what
things
we
you just
can and
never
can't
think
do.
of as somebody
Yeah,
who just shoves it in your face.
yeah, well, exactly. And I think most people think everyone's looking for the holy grail, right? Which is like a really fresh, beautiful truffle, but the retailer wants it to be 6 months. That's why quality streets look like quality streets, right? There's just like toffee, like fondant. It's
Ferrero
because it
Rocher's
lasts,
last 25 years and
lasts
still tastes
donkeys.
fine.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
I've
kind of what you're
never
up
thought
against.
about that
Yeah.
before in my entire life.
So that's reality. When everybody goes out to John Lewis and picks up a box of, those hotel chocolates, like they're shiny. It's
Yeah.
really poor quality. But that's,
The reality of
that's the reality of it, and it's kind of shelf life, and so it's quite restricted from all that. So we don't do like as much. Like to us, new product development is like new packaging, new design,
yeah,
as opposed to kind of really messing around with the
like
flavors.
re-engineering how to do things.
Yeah, at the end of the day, people are always going to like a hazelnut and sea salt bar. They're always going to like an orange bar. Like, so there's not. So we try not to, like we give them what they want with regards to kind of flavors, and we try and give them something a little bit different, with the way we present it.
Yeah, no, cool. What's it? I'm assuming you've been to Colombia to see these kind of farms and stuff. Like, what's that?
Yeah.
What's that like? I've never been to countries like that before, and
Yeah,
is it crazy to kind of see it all in action? Like, actually be at one of the kind of cacao farms and all this stuff.
I think the first reaction is like, you Colombia, everyone's like, "Oh shit! Like, can you go there?"
Yeah,
Are
you gonna die?
That's what I thought. I was like, everyone's seen Pablo Escobar and all these guys, but
I've watched Narcos. I know what it looks like.
Exactly. Yeah, but the reality is, it's a beautiful country, a really great place to visit now. But yeah, I think lots of people can work in an industry like chocolate and never actually see it. And by that I mean like actually going to origin, actually see people working on plantations. Like I say, the industry basically is in Belgium and Switzerland.
Yeah.
So yeah, most people working within the chocolate industry wouldn't really get an opportunity to do that. And it's just that like our partners out there, they're a great company. They're always really good to us. So yeah, we managed to blag a few free flights out there for staff and things. Like they all want to go back now.
Yeah.
So
that's the danger. Send somebody and they probably want to go back all the time.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening right now. And obviously there's other people that want to go. But yeah, I've had the opportunity to go twice. And last time, so we're just there in March. I think it was March this year, and we went with kind of like a film crew to capture all that footage to kind of tell that story a little bit. Because I think that's sometimes people feel quite disconnected from that end of it. So it's cool to go out there.
No, that'd be cool to see that actually. Just like
imminent. It should be ready imminently. So I'm told. We're just well, what we wanted to do was kind of show. I think Colombians in general, from a business perspective, they can be kind of quite like buttoned up, if you put it that way.
Okay.
And I think like everything that you and I might go to Colombia and see and be like, oh, that's cool. Look at this. Look how vibrant the place is. Look at all the street art and things. They're kind of like giving you the corporate version of that,
right.
When the reality is like so much better. So we kind of wanted to go there and we met with some artists and a lot of street art out in Bogota. So we're developing a new Colombian range at the moment, and And we made these videos. We work with Colombian musicians and things as well. So we just kind of, I think what I would love to do moving forward is, as more of these origin countries start manufacturing, like we'd love to do like a range. So let's say, you know, we do a Madagascar range, but working with like those artists, those designers. So it's like, you know, like an origin story for
Yeah,
each
that would be
place.
really cool.
So that's kind of the bigger plan. But the reality is, it's like there's not many people doing it. There's not many people working that way.
In that
So
space.
yeah, exactly. So it would be cool to do. Like I say, Madagascar is kind of the next one. Like I'd love to do Madagascar next year.
Yeah, that'd be pretty wild.
Releasing products and stuff. Yeah, and just kind of like like a crazy different place that I would have never been to before. So yeah, it's good that we get lots of opportunities to travel around.
That's cool.
But yeah, like Colombia itself
it could
is
turn into a whole thing itself. Just keep going to all these different places.
yeah, it's
and-
kind of like an excuse just to kind of
Yeah.
get the company to
Where
pay,
you
pay
say,
for
oh,
my
let's head
holidays.
over.
Yeah. So no, but it's a beautiful country, and it's like, you know, you start off in Bogota, which is the capital. I think it's like 2,000 meters above sea level.
Wow.
So again, like everyone kind of assumes, oh, it'd be really hot there. It's actually almost like 12 degrees.
Yeah.
But then, you know, the flip of that is we drove from Bogota all the way up to the Caribbean coast, a little place called Necoclí. But yeah, like, you know, and it's like 45 degrees.
Yeah.
So it's like it's an amazing country. Like
Wow.
you're kind of going downhill forever. You're like, does this does it ever end? You eventually hit the sea though. But yeah, it's a cool place. And everyone there's like Colombian people themselves, so just really friendly people. So yeah, it's great to work with those guys.
That'll be awesome. By the way, I apologize if people are listening to all the clinking and clanking in the background. The cleaners sound like they're moving house rather than moving
Yeah,
plates.
I
But
did notice.
hey ho, the show must go on. Am I right in saying that you guys were recently in New York?
We were. I wasn't personally, but Lucy, who's our business development manager, she was out there. So it's our first US show, and it went quite
Alright,
it went
cool.
quite well, I think. Like we just started working with an agent out there, called Aesthetic Movement, which is, they're great because they don't really do food and drink, which is kind of the space we live in. Although we're a food and drink company, we're really more like a lifestyle brand, right? So
Yeah.
and that presents its own challenges sometimes from like a sales perspective. But yeah, those are lots of people. Like our average customer is probably, you know, I've got a lifestyle store down in London, and you know they sell loads of other, you know, nice stuff, you know,
Sure.
tote bags, artwork, as opposed to what people might think, which is kind of selling to like the big four, which we absolutely don't do.
Yeah. Is, you know, building obviously the brand internationally something that's kind of on the horizon in terms of plans, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I touched upon there, that our challenge is, because we are more of a lifestyle brand, but we are actually in fact a food and drink company.
Sure.
Like there's not trying to find where your customers might be. So like at the moment, like and this happens to a lot of small companies, like we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of retailers, but they're all quite small. We work with some bigger people in the States, but that's kind of, you know, the challenge is we don't want to diminish the brand. We want to do what we do, but where are we going to kind of get the volume? So the US, like I guess equivalent here in the UK is John Lewis, right? Like household name. But they've only got, I think it's like 42 or 43 stores. So compared to like the US, they're not that big.
Yeah.
So like you know, an equivalent out in the US might have 300, 400, 500 stores. And again, that's kind of that middle tier in the US is just so much bigger.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of the department stores, you know, like Neiman Marcus and all of these guys that have just come on board, like, you know, they can do some decent volume. And that's the balancing act that we're trying to play.
That's cool though.
But yeah, so
Is
yeah,
the
we're
US
hopeful.
quite different in terms of, like, you know, I'm maybe making a sweeping generalization here,
Go
so
for
if
it.
there's any American listeners, I don't wish to offend you, but I would hazard a guess that there's maybe more like craft chocolate companies and things like that based in the UK, or like there's quite a prominent thing here, everything craft,
Yeah.
everything. I know that craft beer and stuff's big in America, but I would never really say I've really heard of an American craft chocolate company.
Yeah, no, there's loads. There's
Really?
loads, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well.
So
Sorry, Americans. Just made a
Yeah.
huge generalization
no,
for
they
you.
do, and they kind of that there's some really quite big companies that are, they are craft brands, and a lot of them do work from the bean. Obviously we don't, but yeah, there's lots of them out there. The competition is absolutely fierce in the chocolate market, our end. So, we're competing with them and we're shipping it from Scotland.
Yeah.
So,
A way smaller country.
yeah, exactly. So I don't know, like the US, we've got big aspirations for it, but like honestly, like we're like the blind leading the blind. Like the reality is, I think when you run a business, you're always kind of in that place where you don't know what you're doing, and I think
That's like refreshing to hear for some people
Yeah.
though, because I think some people have this misconception that if you run a business, you have to give this allure that, a certain kind of mystique of being the entrepreneur and
yeah,
all this kind of stuff, when really sometimes you are just winging it.
oh, absolutely. I mean, nearly everybody I know that runs business is winging it, and that's kind of part of it, right? You need to. By very definition, you're kind of in charted waters all the time because that's good. So if you're growing, you've never been in charge of a business that big before.
Yeah.
Like when it gets, that little bit bigger, it's like you've never been in charge of a business that big before. So you don't really know what you're doing. And the reality is, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them, they're kind of, they think that there's like a silver bullet, like everyone's waiting to hear that one piece of information which is going to change your life. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I think most of it is just knuckling down and getting on with it. And
Yeah.
it's hard
The graft.
work. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's the graft, eventually but there's no secret in any of this stuff, to be honest with you.
A lot of it's probably luck as well.
Yeah. You definitely got to be in the right place at the right time and things. And you've got to be lucky with, people that come and work for you. Like, we've had disasters. We've also got like some great people work for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
true of any company.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like, so there's definitely a massive element of luck to that as well.
Yeah.
Plus they need to get the business and what we're trying to do. And a lot of people like the idea of working for like a startup or a small business. But when they get there, they're like, "Oh shit!
The reality.
Like, this is properly disorganized." And I was like, "You should have seen us a few years ago." I was like, "This is pretty organized." So yeah, there's that element to it as well.
Do you find that there's a lot of people approach you because they maybe like the sound of working for like a cool chocolate company?
Yeah, that's one of our, like, a lot of people think they want to be a chocolatier. So we don't actually use that word anymore when we're recruiting for people downstairs. Like it's very much like, manufacturing. And I think a lot of people have total misconception of what we would do day in, day out. The reality is, like, on the manufacturing floor, it's properly hard work. It's like really physical. I mean, they do an amazing job, the guys. And that's with, we invest a lot in equipment to make their job easier, but it's still, we're always kind of like, we're always kind of like 100 miles an hour and you're always kind of chasing your tail. But that's working in a small business. That's normal. And I think for a lot of people, they're like, some people are just not suited to it because it can be very stressful. And yeah, like everyone's lost their shit every now and again, like in the office and stuff. And like, yeah, that absolutely includes me.
That's like, so like, I don't know, like you always hear these kind of stories where people are kind of giving you the bullshit dream story rather than the actual reality of running, not even running any business, any small business is very challenging, obviously, but I can imagine chocolate being incredibly challenging because people have this bloody weird relationship with chocolate and you're competing with the biggest brands in the world for that.
You are, yeah, exactly. There's that, and that's the thing. Some of our, they're not really our direct competitors.
No,
if you look at the industry, you're some of the biggest companies in the world, like you said, and that's why it's very competitive. So you need to be giving the market something a little bit different, which we do. But then it all comes back to, look, it's just like it's a hard slog sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah. And resilience is what you need. That's like, if anyone ever says what you're good at, I'm like, I'm pretty bloody resilient. That's probably a really good quality to have if you want to run a small business. Because I think loads of people like the idea. Like I've done a few interviews and things before, and I see some of the questions. And I think somebody recently said, "Or did you want to run your own company so you could have, have loads of time off and do what you want when you want?" I was like, that is written by somebody that has never done this shit.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, it's like it swallows you whole. The business, it's like
it's probably
7
quite
days
hard
a week.
to switch off. Or
I find it very, very hard to switch off. Like I'm always on the go. Like if you ask my girlfriend, like you'll see, like I'm out with the calculator. Just she's like, "What are you calculating?" And I'm like, "Stuff." But yeah, I find it quite difficult to switch off. Like I'm constantly like if I have a bad day at work, like I can't turn it off, and I'm just lying in my bed. I'm like, I just want to go fucking sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm bad for that, I think, and I've never really found anything that's kind of
Helped and
yeah, not
distract.
not really. This is not a good
I'm
answer.
like I'd say I probably was a little bit worse when I used to live like a mile from here.
Okay.
And I still drove, sorry. But now I live halfway between Edinburgh and Glasgow. So if I do have a day where I feel like particularly like still thinking about a project I'm working on or something that's happened at work or whatever it is, I've at least got like an hour to cool off before I walk in the door
Yeah,
at
yeah,
home.
yeah. That can help.
And then normally, and then also wanting to do a workout or something like that. So it's usually like a good solid 2.5 hours of distraction
Yeah.
before I actually can switch off. So that kind of helps me personally. But
Yeah, like I've tried a whole
I don't
pile
run
of
a
stuff.
business, so if it was my
Yeah,
business, it'd probably be very different.
it's very difficult for, and that's why most people that see small business owners, they're like, these people are crazy because they are crazy. But yeah, I think being the person that's in charge, the biggest difference is you're in charge, but you're financially in charge too, right? And that's a different type of pressure. Like people rely on you to pay their wages every month, and like sometimes that's not easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, you kind of like,
Is there like
what's
a
the matter with
pressure that
him?
kind of comes up with that?
Yeah, there is pressure that comes up with that. And I remember when I first started, like things were really, really tight, and I used to drive in between the shops to take the money out of the petty cash because we needed it to pay people. Like people don't know that, but
No
that's like
one's
at the
listening.
beginning.
It's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no, I
secret
know.
safe.
But yeah, so it was really tight, and I think it's just normal things, like the business ebbs and flows, and I think
Yeah, especially
particularly what we
chocolate, probably.
yeah, but particularly what we do is like there's an element of seasonality to it. Um, not as much as people might expect, but that kind of does give you huge cash flow problems. So you're spending all your money because Q4 is going to be massive, but like you need the
Yeah,
money to spend, and it's kind of like so. There's a lot of that can kind of be quite stressful, and I think that's one of the bigger differences between small businesses and if you're working for a corporate, right? It's like we've
sure.
got shitloads of dough. It's like yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
fine. So
God,
yeah,
some of them don't even have shitloads of dough, but they're still fine,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is
they'll
the
still be
problem.
fine.
But where do you kind of, I suppose, where would you like to kind of see the business going, like strength from strength?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think opening the airport, so we're kind of back into
That was
the
cool. I was in the
consumer game.
airport recently and saw
Yeah,
that. Like I did, like obviously I knew you were coming on. We had planned this in advance,
yeah,
and that this is kind of cool to see. It's a good spot as well.
yeah. It's a good spot right next to the champagne bar. So yeah, if you're willing to spend £10 on a glass of champagne, then you can get yourself a £6 chocolate bar.
Yeah.
But no, it's a good question. I mean, I think am I going to do it forever? No, I think there's only so long you can. I've done it for 6 years now, and we've done great. But it's like it's quite a heavy toll, and I think eventually you have to figure a way out. And I know, I
Mm.
know that kind of
Have an
sounds
exit
terrible.
strategy as
Yeah, well,
well.
exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I think at the moment we're funny size in that we like who would be our buyer. If we were going to sell the business, who would buy it? And at the moment, there's not an answer to that question because we're probably too big for someone small to buy it, and we're definitely
Right.
too small for anyone big to buy it. So we kind of need to get the business back up. We probably need to, it terrifies me saying it, but we probably need to be 5 times bigger than we are now.
Fucking
Um,
Christ.
so I know. So that's the plan. Um,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, and I guess the question we're asking ourselves now, like, is that do we do more consumer stuff? Like, because the issue sometimes when you're a B2B business, you're kind of waiting on the orders dropping in,
Mm.
whereas to kind of push that revenue um, and hit those sales targets that we've got, sometimes it is easier to say, look, well, we just open like 4 new branches next year or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
But there's, that is the most expensive way to do it, and it's the riskiest way to do it. So yeah, that's always like, who's who is going to be our big customers. Because we can't keep working with like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of small independents.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we will, of course, because they're our customer base. But yeah, I think finding some bigger clients is great, but it's difficult to do. And if the US is where we're looking at, there's there's a whole Atlantic Ocean in the way. So and there's like chocolate melts and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's the challenge. But yeah, I would like to. I guess I'm kind of in it for like at least another 5 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, the goal is to grow it as big as we can get.
Yeah. What is the one thing you'd like looking back? What was the one thing you'd change, or maybe not completely, as in like ignore that piece of information, but what is one thing that you wish you knew kind of coming into Coco, or something that you'd like to do differently if you had the chance?
Wow, probably lots of things. Yeah,
Your answer could be nothing.
Well, I think, we touched on it earlier on, like being really naive is a strength. Like it can be a strength. And I think, if everyone knew what they were letting themselves in for, they would probably never start. So it's one of those things, like, I don't think you can really change anything. I mean, I've learned a lot. You learn a lot about yourself when you're in charge of people. And that's why I learned I'm not very good at it. Yeah.
Although I don't think anyone teaches you how to.
No.
Like it's funny. You obviously you get hopefully brought up well to be kind and polite and generous to people, but you don't get taught how to manage a team.
No.
Ever really. There's not really a course that does that effectively that I've ever found. You can get kind of bullshitty courses and all this kind of stuff, but the reality is that you do just kind of have to make up your own style by borrowing bits of.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you just got to be authentic to who you are. Like, I think there's no point in, like, if people know that I'm not some sort of huge rule guy, that's going to be kind of like lecturing everybody. And to a certain extent, when you first start, you're like, well, I've got to give off this appearance that, and actually you don't. You just need to be yourself, and people will. There's time, like, we're always fucking around in the office, like always. But it's kind of part of the culture of the business.
That's brilliant. No?
Yeah, but people know when to, like, everyone needs to know when to switch on and to switch off, and they do. And I think that's kind of, I think that's important, because I think if you go in and you think, do you know what, I've got to be this different person, like that I'm not. Like, you can't keep that up.
No,
it's not possible.
Especially when the times get rough. That it's like you just got to flip back to your true self.
Exactly, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I've definitely got better at it, but I think most people think I'm like quite a laid back, chilled character when they first meet me. It's like it couldn't possibly be further from the truth. And most people, other than obviously the colleagues that I work with, like, they know me from like a working capacity, but I think that's been very difficult, very, very challenging for me.
I mean, like, one of my kind of mentors has always said that, whenever you join a new business or whatever you do, like, set your stall out and you'll quickly, it's like a cat amongst the pigeons. You'll quickly know who's on board and you'll quickly know who's not on board. And there's things that you can do, obviously, to kind of improve yourself. If you're, nobody wants a shit leader or anything like that, but you're never going to hugely change your personality, nor should you really, like, if you're being hired to do a job, nor should you really completely morph yourself into somebody else.
Yeah.
You got that job for a reason. You're where you are for a reason. Be yourself. And then, yes, will there be some people that don't like that? Maybe so. Try and deal with it in the best way possible. But sometimes some people just won't like it, and then some people will love it, For like that kind of culture at Coco, like very, you're saying that everyone's kind of fucking around and things like that. That's not for everyone either. That sounds brilliant.
No.
That sounds great for me.
Yeah.
But there's somebody else down the road that might want to be more serious and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, everyone knows that kind of, like culture versus kind of, the CV looks great.
Yeah.
And like, we've made mistakes like that. Not because the people weren't good. It's just they weren't suited to that environment. And like, I think you've always got to go with your gut instinct. It's normally always right. And sometimes people don't fit in, and like they don't want to fit in. It's like
Yeah.
it's like look at these idiots. So yeah, it's for some people they love that. For other people they're like, look, I just want to get my head down and crack on and want more
Mm.
structure to my day. Whereas like it could be up to all sorts of nonsense in a day.
Yeah, yeah. Random question, I suppose, but what was the last new thing you learned about chocolate?
The last new thing that I learned about chocolate. I think when you visit somewhere like Colombia and you go to plantations, it's a whole different aspect of the business that we don't do. So
Yeah.
you're always learning new stuff, and it's like quite a fascinating product to work with. And I don't think you could ever learn everything. It's just one of those topics. So yeah, I
There's
don't have a
probably always
specific answer for you, but yeah, I mean, you're always like, if I went to a plantation tomorrow, I would learn a whole pile of new stuff that I'd never heard before because somebody would be doing it in a different way, and there's not kind of like a right single way to do everything. So you'll always be learning something.
Ah, cool. And as I'm sure you're aware, as somebody who runs a chocolate company, granted it's not the dairy milks and the the big huge cheap chocolate in the world, but people have a very strange relationship with chocolate.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people, rightly or wrongly, use it as like a form of like escapism.
Yeah.
I suppose why do you think that is? Why chocolate? And also what like as somebody who runs a chocolate company, what is your escapism? You obviously say you struggle to switch off, so
Yeah, I don't have one.
but
But
could do with one.
yeah, I think like in most countries, but obviously speaking as somebody who's raised in Scotland, it is kind of part of being a child, which is chocolate. And you're right,
Yeah.
it's dairy milk and it's Easter and it's all that sort of stuff, but it's kind of part of our culture. Um, and I just think sometimes people want to like an upgrade on what they already know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of got that. There's an emotive part to chocolate because it's kind of like it's part of your childhood as well.
It's funny because like obviously when you're a kid, you'll eat
You just smash it as
yeah,
much as you
any
can.
kind of shit. And
Yeah.
then as I get older, like I mean, I don't eat too much sweet stuff anyway, but when I love dark chocolate.
Yeah.
Like the darker the better. Like almost like the 90% cooking chocolate.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I love that.
yeah.
And then
It's not for me.
and
That
then
stuff.
like the super sweet, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's weird. It's not for me, but
Yeah, it's I don't know. So yeah, like I guess a lot of people do use it as a crutch, let's say.
yeah.
But I think people will eat chocolate like every day, and I think that's one of the arguments we always have with people. They're like, "Oh, we don't want it till like October because it's the only time we sell chocolate," and I'm like, "You're kidding, right? Like
Yeah.
people eat this stuff all
All
the
the
time."
time.
Yeah. But yeah, like what do I do? I mean, I've given everything a bash. I try and meditate every day for like 10 minutes in
Is
the
that like
morning before I go to
Headspace kind
work.
of thing?
It's Sam Harris app, but
Oh
it's
right, yeah,
similar
yeah, yeah.
to
I've not. Is the app's good? Like I've not actually.
Wake Up, I think.
Yeah, waking
Um,
up with Sam Harris.
it's good,
I'm a
yeah.
big fan of Sam Harris.
Yeah, no, he's great. So it's kind of like
I love his podcast as well. He's
Yeah.
got some pretty interesting characters on it at times.
yeah, he does. So he's kind of I'm trying to get into that. Like it does help me because it just buys you that kind of when the shit hits the fan and something happens, you can you're meant to be able to kind of switch it on. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, just chill the fuck out. And like it has helped a little bit. So like I try and do that every day. But like I said, like I find it even like, I find it very difficult to kind of switch off anyway. So it helps a little bit. So I'm trying to find something.
It's better than not doing anything, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah.
I suppose we kind of maybe already touched on this in terms of like the perception of chocolate, but what's the one thing that aggravates you most about the chocolate industry, including the big guys? Like,
I guess, it can be like the guys at the bottom of the food chain, the guys that work on plantations and stuff, particularly in West Africa, they're just not paid very well for what they
Yeah.
do. And I think that's, as you kind of see, like a lot of the big companies, like Nestle and things, they're starting to pull out, and Cadbury's and things like they're starting to pull out of schemes like fair trade, and they're starting to create their own ones, which like I would definitely be skeptical of. So I
I
think it's that.
never
Yeah,
realized that.
yeah. The kind of there's a move to kind of self-regulate for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
And you're right. They're like, they're enormous. Some of these companies are enormous. I mean, Nestle is huge.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think I think,
Skeptical
yeah,
snake eyes on that.
yeah. I think most people who worked in the industry would like to see more money going to the people
Mm,
at the run. But it's been a problem since like any commodity based business.
sure.
It's always been like this, and that's why for me, what we talked about earlier, saying what could the reality is these big companies are going to go in there and they're going to pay as little as they possibly can because that's the business model, right?
Sure.
Um, and for me, like, if origin based places, if they just did more of the product, so if they just made more of the product before they sold it, like for me, that kind of seems like a solution. Like what they've done in Colombia is very interesting. Because they need to go and take it. Like, like they're not going to be given it. They're never going to be given it. Or let's pay you extra. It's never going to happen. So they need
Yeah,
to go out there and take it. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of a frustration, I guess,
yeah.
with the industry. And it's like you know, we're kind of quite small, so it's like it's fine me sitting here preaching about it, but it ain't gonna change anything.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, so
It's better than companies like yourself not existing at all.
yeah, absolutely. And most people, there is like people do want to buy an ethical product. I just think the way that corporations work is it's just kind of like they're these huge machines that don't ask, don't tell. Like nobody's like everyone knows the bad shit that's going on, but it's just kind of like
Yeah.
swept under the carpet. Um, but yeah, and small
Feels like
companies.
there's like I don't know if there is, but like a huge like scandal documentary needing to be made about that kind of stuff because there's some
Yeah,
pretty. All it takes is some like just doing research for like the show, like googling chocolate and all the kind of industry of chocolate. The amount of things that come up about scandals and
yeah.
about mistreating of farmers and plantations and all this kind of stuff is like it's totally rife with it. But
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
nothing really ever gets done because no
yeah,
one really cares
yeah. It's one of those things. It's like it's far enough away for us
to not be concerned
to
about.
not like to if we sat and sort of engaged our minds for like a second, we'd be like, this is bad.
Yeah.
But we don't. Like we're all so busy and we've all got you know you'd be
But
buying
yet some people are so quick to jump on like the boycotting of other products
yeah.
because of the way people get treated. But chocolate seems to be that one that people aren't willing to kind of
Yeah, it's
boycott.
just like
So
yeah, they need their chocolate. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's
it's a
difficult.
bit
I mean, they've been
frustrating,
trying to
isn't it?
fix this problem for a long time now, and I think the move to kind of the industry effectively kind of self-regulating is not necessarily the best way to go.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see.
no, that'll be interesting. And where can people find out, I suppose, more about cocoa, where to get some?
Our website,
Where to find out to get some?
yeah, cocochocolatier.com. Um, Loads of cool videos coming out soon about our trips to Colombia and things, so people can find out about that. Obviously, you can buy products on our website, and then yeah, loads of great stockists
Yeah, check it
up
out
and down
next time
the
you're at
UK.
Edinburgh Airport as well.
Yeah, exactly. Edinburgh Airport. We're just airside through there. But yeah, that's where they
Awesome.
can find it.
No, well, thank you very much for coming on the show, mate. I really appreciate it, and actually really excited about. Kind of wish I had more insight into the chocolate school prior to the thing, but it sold out. I just wasn't quick enough. But
Yeah,
next time I'll definitely get myself in there and I'll let you know how it goes. But I can't
good.
wait
Yeah,
to
yeah.
kind
Looking
of
forward to having you.
attend chocolate school and make my own chocolate. Might be the downfall of the clean eating though. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
But we'll see. But thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And to wrap up, as per usual, please head over to the website at the mitmpodcast.com. That's the mitmpodcast.com. You can find the rest of the episodes, where to get the show on all the different platforms, and also where you'll find out more information about how you can personally support the show too. Make sure you can also head over to your favorite podcast platform, wherever that may be, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you get notified when a new episode goes up. And while you're there, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review. It lets me know what you guys think of the episodes, but it also helps bring other people into the show too and kind of help us grow the show. So that's it from us here. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found some method in the madness.